Great. Well, if I don't get any indication from my team saying that we should delay the start, I guess we could kickstart this webinar on business and nutrition. So my name is Emeline Felus. I'm the director of FRESH, which stands for Food Reform for Sustainability and Health, one project under the World Business Council for Sustainable Development organization. I'm really glad to welcome everyone to this webinar today. We're going to have two webinars actually, one this morning in Europe, one this afternoon in Europe, and which corresponds to mornings and afternoons all over the world. We've actually had over 200 people registering. And we look forward to the interactions with all of you. So, of course, we're having this webinar first of all because we are halfway through the UN Decade of Action on Nutrition, which is being marked next year by the Nutrition for Growth Summit, at a date that still needs to be confirmed, by the way, but also, and I would say more importantly, everybody has in their mind the fact that we are today in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has accelerated hunger and malnutrition throughout the world. We're still in the midst of it. We still see all of the consequences unwrap all over the world. And this has actually stressed more than ever the role of the business in providing food security and nutrition. This, I would say, through two main ways. The first one is really ensuring the food security and nutrition throughout the workforce, all the way to the farmers, actually, who are at the very beginning of the value chain, but also providing food to all of the people throughout the world, much wider than the workforce. Everybody that is buying the goods of the businesses, SMEs, as well as big multinationals. And the role of the business is to ensure that people actually are food secure and are nourished properly, but also to do that while protecting our natural resources. Because we know that the more we are actually impacting on natural resources, the more we are seeing climate change happen, the more actually we are driving further poor health and food scarcity. So with no further delay, let me move to the next slide, please. Today's speakers are going to be stars, and really look forward to a lot of really interesting inputs they're going to share. So we're going to have Steve Godfrey, who works for GAIN, Amy Inaoka, who works for the government of Japan, Rocco from IFBA, Emily Grady, my colleague from WBCSD, Barbel from GAIN, and Sharon from CGF. All of them will introduce themselves in more details at the very beginning of their session. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. So they will be talking to us about why nutrition should be a priority, give us some updates about the Nutrition for Growth Summit. Then we'll be very proud and happy to launch the Responsible Business Pledge. And then we will also be happy to recall to you and present the Workforce Nutrition Pledge. And finally, we'll take up to 15 minutes to take up discussions and questions. Now, something important I should say is that questions you can keep for the end, but you can also, throughout all of the presentations, type your questions in the chat box. And the presenters will try to answer those questions either during their presentation or at the end of their presentation. And we'll keep the ones that we haven't been able to address for the later on session. So a very brief introduction to the WBCSD, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. We work with 200 global companies around the world. One aim really is to create a world in which we feed people well while preserving the planet. So the next slide tells you just some of the companies that are actually working with the WBCSD. And no, don't be shocked that not all companies are active in food because, as the next slide shows, we actually work on several systems transformations. So circular economy is one, cities and mobilities, climate and energy, people redefining value, and last but not least, the food and nature. And it's under that umbrella that we're having this webinar and that we're working all together today. Next slide, please. So this is one of many events, virtual events, given the situation, that we are running throughout the months. And if you're interested to actually access other events, then you can actually go to this address here. Maybe I suggest Camila or Emily that you type in the chat box this address because nobody can click on it. And then you will also be able to participate in other events. Next slide, please. Good, so a bit of housekeeping rules here. This session is being recorded, you've been notified. If you don't like it, then then don't type or don't speak up. We can't change that. All participants have been muted. You can unmute yourselves, but we would prefer if you would actually type your questions and your comments rather than mute yourself, because we are quite a number of people on this line. For that, use the chat function. Then please prepare to use the Mentimeter. It's becoming more and more known, but in case you haven't yet, you can familiarize yourself by going to this address, which is www.menti.com. And then you should use the code that is being asked, 307084. And then throughout the presentation, sometimes we will be asking you questions. So you can prepare it now, but please leave it aside. You won't be triggered before quite a while. And of course, after this webinar, since we have your email addresses, we will be sending you a link to the slides and the recording. So you don't have to take pictures right now of the slides, you will get much better resolution afterwards. Good, next slide, please. So, because so many of us are on this webinar and so many different companies as well, let us remember that we are following the antitrust regulations, and therefore we will avoid any discussion that touches pricing, bid strategies, capacity additions or reductions, customers, and output decisions. Next slide, please. Good. Well, I'm really glad now to pass the floor to Steve for a really exciting first presentation. And again, please type your questions in the chat, and we'll try to take a few at the end of this presentation. And otherwise, we'll have a big brainstorming, big Q&A at the end of all of the sessions. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Emmeline. Steve here from GAIN. Greetings to many friends and colleagues on this call. And a big shout out to WBCSD for your continuing energy and activism on all these big global challenges. I'm going to say something about the current context of nutrition, food security, and the SDGs, which many of you will know quite a bit about. A little bit then about the changed circumstances of 2020, and then go into some of the connections to N4G. So, slide. Yeah, I think you know this. Malnutrition is a pretty core problem facing humanity. Nearly 2 billion people are overweight or obese, 2 billion deficient in vitamins or minerals, and chronic hunger is probably on the rise, nearly 821 million. Okay, next slide, please. So if you look at the key kind of metrics or indicators for many of the health objectives we have, stunting, anemia, type 2 diabetes, overweight and obesity, those 6 there, unhealthy diets are really at the core of these. And if I could have the next slide. You may know this, but I mean, this just sets out very starkly that the biggest burden of disease globally is all risk factors related or linked to diet. Malnutrition for children and mothers, dietary risks, high blood pressure, and so on. So perhaps know this from the global panel, but we know that poor diets are really at the core of the challenge around healthy development. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we're obviously as GAIN particularly interested in improving the quality of diets through nutrient-rich foods. And if you look at some of the trends over the last decade to the data, to the middle of 2016. This is an example just of one country, big country in Africa, Ethiopia. Here you see that, yeah, if you look at the trends, often the things that we really want to encourage more availability, accessibility, and desirability for, dairy products, eggs, vegetables, fruit and veg, these have really gone up in price significantly. And some of the things that are, you know, perhaps potentially more damaging to health if consumed in wrong amounts, like oils, fat, sugar, and honey, have gone down in price. The next slide, please. So we already face a situation where on many of the indicators, SDG2, we are basically in a little bit of trouble. Doesn't look like we're going to achieve a lot of them. And so COVID comes on top of that, and it layers a whole new set of challenges to the food system, which IFPRI describes, I think, really well as the degradation of many food value chains. So we know about the containment measures in our own countries and globally. WFP is estimating that, you know, acute hunger will rise almost, well, more than double from 130 million to 265 million. We're working with a number of universities on a program looking at some of the other key indicators, and child wasting, for example, it looks as though this could rise by up to 20% in the next year. And I think in general, you know, we don't have all those studies yet, but we know there's a very close link between poverty and health indicators, and there's a very clear correlation between poverty and indicators like stunting. So the impact goes far beyond just food access, I mean, availability of food for people not to feel hungry. It goes right into changes around the quality of diets and what people are able to consume on a daily basis. Yeah, next slide, please. So here's this slide just shows you, look at those price increases over a month to the middle of May. They're quite significant, particularly for poor people, many of whom their income has also plummeted because they're no longer able to work on a daily basis. And then on the right-hand side, we're very concerned about impact on, for example, food fortification staples. There's been a big progress in that over the last decade, but there's a danger of some considerable drop-off in the quality of staples that are being consumed because of the cost and interruption to supply. Yeah, next slide, please. We're particularly concerned about the impact on SMEs and the sort of informal markets, which really, these show you what percentage of people's food, rural and urban, come from these more informal markets. It's huge. So if you look at the next slide, we did a survey, which we'll post in the chat now, the access to it, with WFP and the Sun Business Network. And I think it shows what many of you I know are really active in business as members of WBSSD. We all know this, but the impact on the SMEs, which are often the backbone of where people get their food from, is really quite significant. Really big changes in accessibility of inputs and concern about the future. Next slide. So I don't need to tell anyone on this call that business is pretty fundamental. So when we look at the whole issue of food and diets, we know that, yeah, the private sector is at the core of all aspects. This wheel shows you all aspects of the food system, and from production through to consumption, marketing, and so on. So I think that the level of ambition and commitment and interest of the private sector is fundamental to the ability to achieve SDG2 and to the N4G. Next slide. So this is very interesting, because this is a survey done by Accenture looking at with CEOs, lots of CEOs, global CEOs of food and other companies. And they were asked to really look at what they would define their performances against what would be a threshold action against all the SDGs. So in the case of SDG2, it would be increasing productivity, efficiency, and nutrition profile of all foods in their operations and portfolios. And if you look at where food comes in there and SDG2 comes in there, it's clearly quite far down. There's a lot of opportunity for scaling up the action around this. If you compare action on food systems to, say, for example, 5 gender or 8 employment, significantly lower. In fact, food, SDG2, is one of the lowest, along with marine pollution. Next slide. I don't want to say much about this. We're going to post the connection to this. It's really about an initiative being taken by lots of organizations or individuals and organizations that I would commend to you to look at offline. It's a declaration, a call to action around nutrition that many individuals from companies, donor organizations, UN agencies have signed up to. It was drafted and released last week. So if you come to the next slide, you'll see, yeah, it's really around research and research community coming together to connect and build evidence for nutrition in the face of COVID-19. Please take a look at it. We'll put it in the chat, but you may want to see there are now 200 people supporting it, some very influential people supporting it, and you may want to add your own support to it. So next slide. So yeah, in conclusion, I think when we look at the summit next year, and it's great to see on the participant list lots of colleagues from Tokyo and from Japan, I think that what we see now is that the impact of COVID-19 has really made a difficult situation around SDG2 even more difficult. On the positive side, it's kind of really woken up everybody to the fact that food systems are so fundamental to our economy and our health, and they have to be resilient. I'm struck in my own community that, we here in the UK, that, we talk about people who work as checkout agents in supermarkets in the same breath as we talk about doctors and nurses. They're essential workers. And I think that's a change. Maybe we took our food system for granted. So I think that there's an opportunity to use this crisis to build on public awareness and political awareness that the food system really affects every one of us on a daily basis and is fundamental to our health, not just because nutrition's central to immune systems, to ability to protect from infections, but because poor malnutrition outcomes are clearly linked in terms of comorbidity to viruses like COVID-19. I'm talking here about diabetes, overweight and obesity. There's a clear link in terms of mortality and morbidity. So I think what we're going to do today is we're going to be able to look at, I think, is a fantastic program of initiatives being taken by WBCSD, IFBA, and other business structures around the Nutrition for Growth Summit, with lots of ambitious and very practical ideas, two of which we're going to hear about today, for businesses to really help the global community step up and take action around making nutrition really relevant to our future and building food sustainability and healthy diets into the global agenda and the Food Systems Summit next year in a very practical way. Thanks, Emily.
Thanks a lot. Let's see maybe if there are any, thank you so much, Steve. This was really useful. I wonder if there are any immediate comments or questions that people want to type in the chat. Let's just give it 30 seconds, see if there is any question or any comments, and then we move to the next speaker. Okay, well, I guess we can move to the next speaker, Steve, and if we have any questions, you can answer them right away in the chat. Thank you again so much for your time. Amy, can you unmute yourself? And wonderful. Hello, Amy.
Can you hear me?
Very well, yes.
Okay, good. On behalf of the government of Japan, I'm delighted to join you here today at this meeting on discussing business and nutrition. And we think it is a good basis and a good step towards the Tokyo Nutrition Summit, which will be held in 2021 maybe. And as you have been aware or feeling the impact from this coronavirus pandemic, food system and nutrition is quite fundamental to the country's human capital as well as economy. And obviously, we become very aware that nutrition is necessary for preventing the diseases and treatment, and definitely the people's the quality of the workforce. So Japan has been quite aware of this fundamentality of nutrition and the health. So we've been positioning health as one of the pillars of our country's diplomacy, and has decided to host Nutrition for Growth Summit in 2020. But as you can guess, because of this travel restrictions constraints, we are now discussing how we could hold this summit, maybe not in this year, but next year. In any way, our government has been continuously committed to this nutrition and food system issues. And the goal of the summit to positioning nutrition as an essential driver of sustainable development. And the summit will provide the platform to discuss our actions with various stakeholders, including business. And as you might be aware, the Nutrition for Growth Summit is that has initiated by London Summit in 2030, and we would like to increase this global momentum towards nutrition for to achieving the 2030 goal. And in our Tokyo Summit, we would like to stress more on food system and as well as business engagement. And needless to say, food systems are fundamental in every country's poor diets are leading cause of burden of diseases, particularly the increasing rate of obesity, as well as non-communicable diseases. So in that sense, one of the most important ways to extend health and development, food system and food environment is quite essential. So in that sense, Japan values the indispensable role of private sector, because as you can see, private sector supply food, and also the business provide people's, the space to live, like workplace. People spend most of their lifetime in workplace and get to obtain value and behavior from the business or from the workplace. So as you have already suggested, businesses are quite important to improve global nutrition. And particularly, workforce nutrition is a critical entry point for companies across all sectors to help improve the health and well-being of employees, supply chain workers, and society at large. And also, food and agriculture companies can go even further by growing and manufacturing healthy foods, and that helping people adapt healthy diets. So, as we know, this indispensable role of the business, we would like you to utilize this Tokyo Nutrition for Growth Summit to present your policy or actions, or to use this platform to discuss your future actions. And the Japanese government would be very delighted to have you in Tokyo to listen to your good practice, or which should be expanded globally. Thank you very much, and we would like to have your cooperation, and we would like you to step up to our joint collaboration to the global nutrition. Over.
Thank you so much, Umi. We really appreciate the leadership of the government of Japan in making this summit happen in spite of today's situation, and are also looking forward to it. We can't wait to hear if and when it's going to happen, hopefully early next year. Everybody's really gearing their efforts and their work towards participating there and really leveraging the force of everyone and every stakeholder to achieve impact. Is there any question or any comment to Amy's contribution before we move to the next speaker? please again type it in the chat. I see that the chat is going on. We've received a lot of links actually from different speakers and participants. So I encourage everyone to check out the chat. And if not, I suggest that we move to the next session. Thank you so much. Perfect. So Rocco and Emily, the floor.
Thank you very much, Emmeline. I'm Rocco Rinaldi, and I run the International Food and Beverage Alliance, which is a group of 12 leading food and non-alcoholic beverage companies who have been working on nutrition and health since 2008. IFBA has been working closely with the business constituency group of the Tokyo Summit, which includes GAIN, the Access to Nutrition Foundation, WBCSD, CGF, Food Industry Asia. Forgive me if I forget anyone, but it's a group of associations and organizations like GAIN who have been leading the effort to secure business engagement with the Tokyo Summit. And on that basis, we have developed a responsible business pledge for better nutrition, which I will explain in brief. Next slide, please. A bit of context. The Nutrition for Growth Summit is billed as a historic opportunity to tackle malnutrition challenges. As you've heard from Steve, not only has malnutrition been a persistent global problem, it is being aggravated by the current health emergency. We are also this year marking the midterm of the Decade of Action on Nutrition, the UN initiative to prioritize nutrition. And we expect the midterm report from the United Nations on that this summer, which will, to a degree, point us to what we need to do over the next 5 years. The intent of the Tokyo Summit is to stimulate innovative ways to drive progress on nutrition. And in particular, the summit will be looking for meaningful commitments and actions that seek to actually give traction to the many national level strategies and targets that we do have. So the Responsible Business Pledge is a framework. It's a framework that business organizations and individual companies will be encouraged to use in order to make commitments that help achieve global nutrition progress. And next slide, please. The Responsible Business Pledge starts off with some principles. So if you like, it's a bit of an entry ticket. In order to be part of this, the framework asks companies or organizations making commitments to also uphold a few principles, one of which is to make better nutrition a long-term board-level priority. So to ensure that there is high-level and consistent business backing for nutrition initiatives, and really with a view to integrating nutrition into the company's business strategy, at least when we're talking about food companies or companies that operate in the food value chain. Secondly, to put in place corporate strategies that make a meaningful business contribution to the achievement of the nutrition-related SDGs. So that really flows from the first principle. And thirdly, to put in place measures to ensure that investments in nutrition take into account the systemic nature of the food system. So essentially, guarding against counterproductive unintended effects in other areas, for example, on environmental sustainability. And crucially, the signing up to the pledge implies making commitments in 3 or more of the commitment areas that are set out in the framework. There will be specific allowances for SMEs and potentially for companies where only one business area, where one commitment area is actually relevant and material to the business. But by and large, the ask is to make commitment across at least 3 areas. And finally, signing up also implies a commitment to reporting in the framework of the Tokyo accountability framework that is still being finalized, but that will rely in the first instance on companies and organizations self-reporting that will then be subject to review and due diligence by the accountability mechanism that will be put in place. Next slide, please. So commitments. The commitments should be SMART, i.e. specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. That is a precondition for all commitments, and they need to go beyond business as usual. They should also be closely linked to the core business, i.e. material to the company or organization making the commitment. They should have a meaningful and demonstrable positive impact on nutritional outcomes, and they should take into account trade-offs with social or environmental factors. And finally, they should be aligned with national or international nutrition priorities as appropriate, as well as the Tokyo Nutrition for Growth Summit principles for engagement and accountability framework. Next slide, please. The commitment areas are 7, and these are the areas in which companies and organizations are asked to formulate and submit commitments in view of the Tokyo Summit. The first is nutrition smart agriculture. So that speaks first and foremost, though not exclusively, to companies at the beginning of the chain, where we envisage a number of potentially interesting interventions going from plant breeding through regenerative agricultural practices and planet smart agriculture. The second area is really about product. So that's commitments in the area of product formulation, reformulation, innovation, all with a view to improving the nutritional quality of products and the ability of products to make a positive contribution to diets. The third is about business models and innovation in business models for improved nutrition. So prioritizing nutrition in the development of new business models in value chain innovation and in nutrition sensitive supply chain. The next area is about marketing, ensuring responsibility in marketing, in particular, but not exclusively, when it comes to children and the promotion of food products with different nutritional profiles to children in particular. The promotion of healthy eating covers both consumer information, i.e. commitments on, for example, nutrition labeling on front of pack, but also off-label via other means in store. And more broadly, the promotion of healthy diets through, for instance, nutrition literacy, through educational campaigns, awareness campaigns, and so on. The next area is workforce nutrition, since this is an area where companies can often make a very immediate difference. And that is about the provision of healthy food at work, nutrition education at work, integrating nutrition into company health policies and health checks, as well as support for breastfeeding. in the area of workforce nutrition, there is in fact there will be a standalone initiative which is led by the Consumer Goods Forum, the Workforce Nutrition Pledge, which will also allow companies the opportunity to sign up to an existing framework in this area. Last but not least, finance and investment for improved nutrition. So also possible will be financial commitments such as impact investing for nutrition, supporting SMEs in the production of nutritious foods, and providing financial terms that are favorable or particularly favorable to companies that prioritize nutrition. So these are the areas for making commitments. They are hopefully broad enough to allow a broad spectrum of companies along the food value chain, but also potentially companies that are not strictly speaking in the food value chain, but that do have an impact at some point or other of the food value chain to make meaningful commitments. Next slide, please, Emily. We have obviously some uncertainties about the timeline for all of this. As Emmy pointed out, the date for the summit has not yet been rescheduled. We hope it will be as early as possible in 2021. For the time being, we have finalized the pledge, the framework for the Responsible Business Pledge, and we are launching it here today with you all on this webinar to start with, and from here it will be made more broadly available. And that on that basis we will encourage our own member companies in our respective associations, and then more broadly companies and organizations to start developing smart commitments that could fit within this framework. Likely we will have until roughly the end of the year to formulate commitments to be submitted in 2021 to Tokyo, but we will come back with a more definitive timeline when we can. Thank you very much, Evelyn.
Thank you so much. Great. So again, let's see whether there are any comments or questions. People have remained really calm and quiet, I must say. It must be because all of the presentations are so complete.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning or good evening for our Tokyo colleagues. This is Alia from Nestlé. First of all, thank you very much for all the information that you have shared since the beginning of this session. Really highly appreciated. And reflecting on the last presentation of Rocco, may I just ask a point of clarification? When we outline the commitments, the smart commitments, which needs to go beyond the business as usual, which I fully agree with Rocco's point on this. So for this commitment that we are going to develop, should they be seen as collective commitments, which means in this case, a bunch of companies, food, non-food, etc., adhering to those commitments, or should we also consider individual company commitments?
Thank you for the question, Salia. Indeed, very relevant. The idea is that it is open to both. Mm-hmm. So ideally, we will have business organizations making as many collective commitments as possible. But indeed, individual companies are encouraged to make their own commitments that ideally are also building on collective commitments, but that, of course, should go beyond wherever possible and be adapted to the specificities of different companies. One small point I would add to that, if I may, is in the spirit of this process is also that commitments should be mutually reinforcing wherever possible, and that applies not only to private sector commitments but also public sector commitments, so that the two really should go hand in hand and be mutually reinforcing wherever possible. We shall see how that pans out in practice, but I think it's a good guiding principle to keep in mind wherever relevant.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. This is clear. Thank you, Rocco. Very helpful.
Sure.
Any other question or comment? As much as possible, please type in the chat so that people can also here read the question well. If not, I think this is pretty clear, and thanks a lot, Rocco, for this. Shall we move to the next session? I mean, the next presentation. So this is for Barbara, I believe. Barbara and Sharon. Great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here, and it's wonderful with CGF and with Sharon and her team. We are developing the Workforce Nutrition Pledge, and it's something that is really that is in your own hand, and that you can where you can make people directly happy. Before I start, I just want to share one experience with me, how to make Zoom calls more relaxing. So there's a simple technique where you can just put your index fingertip to the tip of your thumb and just press it. And when you press it, then automatically your breathing system changes. So your breathing system changes into belly breathing. And I promise you, if you do this, nobody watches at you, you will be more relaxed after the presentation. So I can just, this is my tip for all the Zoom calls to get more energies. And now I would like to move to my presentation. Thank you for the, this is just my tip. And what we are doing is we have first a Mentimeter question for you. That is, the question will be, do you think workforce nutrition is really well addressed in your company? So I would like to ask you now to go to the Mentimeter and to fill in. It looks like that that this presentation is valuable for at least 50% of you. So we would like to Sharon and I would like to show how you can improve workforce nutrition in your company. So why is it important? Why is it important? So CGF and GAIN, we set up the Workforce Nutrition Alliance, and we really want to reach 3 million employees in the next by 2025. It's and if you imagine to make 300 million people more healthy and happier, it's a wonderful pledge, and you have it in your own hand. It's really in your own direct space of influence. If you see, but we are not asking it to make that people feel happier, because it has also a definite business sense. So from literature we know that there will be reduced absenteeism. Automatically then the productivity increases, And we also noticed lower rates of accidents and greater job satisfaction, which is important too. So these benefits can occur if you address workforce nutrition on 4 levels. So we did an investigation. What are the 4 pathways for nutrition in companies? So that is, first is healthier food at work, nutrition education, and then we have the health checks and breastfeeding. And breastfeeding, it looks always a little bit strange, but it's really because if the child is sick, the mother is not fully present at work. So that is and the mother also is not concentrating. So it has a big impact. And we of course want, Sharon is explaining you the journey you can take as an employer, and we also would like to have you as gold members of our of the Workforce Nutrition Pledge. And now we would like to ask you again to go to the Mentimeter, and the question will be, what kind of benefits do you notice with your workforce nutrition program? Thank you for filling it in, and I think it's clear. A greater job satisfaction you can measure very easily, and what we are trying to do with GAIN to see how can we reduce programs related to attribute to reduced absenteeism. It's not so easy, but we have some metrics for it. So it's good to see greater job satisfaction, reduced absenteeism, and then also enhanced productivity. Maybe we could help you in measuring and going for the next, helping you with measurements to see the benefits also for direct business benefits. So what you can do is healthier food at work is relatively simple. That is offering snacks or lunches at work, because as a person we spend 1/3 of our lives in a workplace. Right now, of course, it's different, but it will be after COVID, it will be again. So 1/3 of the time. So that is a window of opportunity that is really very very profound. The nutrition education ideally moves into nutrition behavior change. But we start first with nutrition education at the workplace. Health checks, I think they are clear. They are clearly understood. And the breastfeeding support, as I already mentioned, is really to support the mother to be fully present and the child as the future generation of your workforce. And now I hand over to Sharon.
Thank you very much, Barbel, and thank you everyone on today's call. So I'm Sharon, and I work for the Consumer Goods Forum, and we're thrilled to really work with GAIN to drive this, I think, very exciting initiative, because it cuts across all sectors. There's no barriers. It's for private sector, civil society, all employers basically around the world, I think, can get behind this vision of really impacting, not only reaching, but impacting these 3 million people around the globe by 2025. So Barbel has explained the 4 areas that we're focusing our work on, because with the expertise from GAIN, we've really seen that these are the 4 areas that can drive impact. So what will this alliance offer? And again, this is cross-cutting. It's for everyone that's on this webinar today. It doesn't matter what organization you're a member of. We want to really demonstrate the value of driving workforce nutrition programs across your your company and really work with you on simplifying that implementation, because we understand and we're discovering as we're going through the development of this alliance that not all of the asks are easy. But if this was an easy challenge, we wouldn't have to be collaborating on it together. So we're really thrilled with the support that we're getting. So we're working with the team on making the case for action, providing implementation support, and also support around monitoring and reporting. We saw that these really were the three foundational pillars that we needed to build to support all of the employers that we're trying to reach to meet the vision of the Workforce Nutrition Alliance. And so how are we going to do this? So on the next slide, what we're working on at the moment is an employer journey. So what we're doing right now is with the members of the Consumer Goods Forum, manufacturers and retailers, and GAIN are doing the same thing with partners beyond the private sector. We're doing some self-assessment. So really looking at what does the current situation look like, and I'll show you what a scorecard actually entails. What does that look like? So doing this sense checking with retailers and manufacturers around the world on these 4 areas. What data do you have access to? What information do you already have at hand? What are the difficult pieces of information? How for many of the large global companies with global offices and offices in maybe 70 countries around the world, what can we do to support you to really understand where you lie in terms of implementation across those 4 areas? And then the next step of the journey will help to set targets and commitments. And of course, we have this wonderful milestone of the Nutrition for Growth Summit in Tokyo. We want to make sure that employees and the workforce are front and center of that milestone and that nutrition journey in Tokyo. We will work with employers around the world to help to develop this plan to meet those targets. We're currently building with the expert team at GAIN an implementation support plan, and Barbara will give you some details on what that looks like. It's still a work in progress, so we'd love any feedback on our plans to date. We're working, of course, Rocco mentioned it, Steve mentioned it, the importance of data and figures, so really monitoring and reporting and seeing, are we actually reaching that impact that we have in our ambition. We've worked on the scorecard and get feedback from a number of stakeholders around the globe, including AT&I, and what we can do in terms of feeding in to the accounting mechanism that's being built for the Nutrition for Growth Summit in Tokyo. And then, of course, reaping the rewards. Barbara explained some of the areas where we see that this is of benefit to employers around the world. We want to help you in your company to build that case. I think many of us believe in that, but it is a case for change that we want to help you to build why investing in nutrition for your workforce is really something that will help you to reap rewards and have that happier workforce that we've seen on the last Mentimeter poll. So how do we do it? So on the next slide, I'll just give you a brief introduction to what the scorecard looks like. So what we did, we built it on the 4 pillars. We looked across these 4 pillars to see which of the areas that if you implemented within your company, the number of areas that we have in the scorecard, you would build points. You can see here on the slide, there is a difference in the weighting of the points, and that's based on the evidence that the GAIN team have pulled together on the impact on healthy food at work, nutrition education, health checks, and breastfeeding support. But the ultimate aim is to get to 100 points. So across the scorecard, there's a number of different areas where you can self-assess where you stand across your implementation plans in those 4 areas, and where you score and what you achieve across those 4 areas. So what we've done is we've built a plan which we hope is a pragmatic and progressive approach to help you move from beginner to, of course, the ultimate goal would be to be goal status. The self-assessment we're seeing so far is really helping members to see maybe you're scoring high in healthy food at work, but you're lacking in terms of points in nutrition education. And all of this input is being fed back into the team now and helping us to build the implementation plan and that support program that we're currently building. So it's really important for us to get this feedback. And if you're not a member of the Consumer Goods Forum, or you're a part of WBCSD, and you would like to be help us as part of this sense checking, we're very open to doing interviews with other companies to really make sure that we've understood this whole data and analytic process as we build the implementation plan. So I'll hand you back to Barbara just to look at what one of those scorecards actually looks like. And of course, if you do want to help us on this journey, we would be very pleased to hear from you. Just pop the name of your company in the chat and we will reach out to you after the presentation. So Barbara, back to you.
Yeah. So on the next slide, you see this is the one pager for healthy food at work. So it's only one pager. So the beauty of our scorecard is our topic is relatively concise. So we have in fact four sheets, but we are aiming to get them even into a kind of support system via digital support. So we had a couple of conversations already with companies. They liked it. It was practical. Something is not practical enough. So we are building on it. And this is in fact what you can expect: 4 sheets like this, and then we have different points. And we are aiming to put it into link it to ATNI or the future accountability mechanism for Tokyo. So it will be you report into one system and not into our specific system. So that will be positive. We want really to make it as practical as possible. And if you rate your scorecard, if you see you have rooms to improve, so then we are also helping you. So we have we are designing from the scorecard a special implementation program for all the different topics. And we thought we are offering 3 different levels. One is basic, that is for free. So that will be basic understanding of the 4 areas. So that is easily accessible. That is for the beginners on the journey. And then we have, some areas, we assume that some areas you are very keen on and you're good, but some areas you're not, you want to improve. So what we do then is to offer you advanced courses, and the advanced courses are a course plus also assignments, and that is more peer-to-peer learning, that is interaction, that are videos, that is interactive course. And Advanced Plus is in the end, as you may imagine, the need for nutrition at work is in the end of your supply chains the biggest. So we are quite in a luxury place that we have that our food is affordable and accessible. So, but we would love to bring it to the end of the supply chain. So that is the Advanced Plus course. So how do we make sure that also your workers in the supply chain are receiving the best workforce nutrition programs they can get? So that is the last stage. So we are designing it, and we are designing it in context with the industry, and to see how to make it really as valuable as possible. And we would like now from you. Now you have the chance to add into the next Mentimeter. That is about what kind of support programs would you prefer. So I really would like to encourage you to give your feedback, that we can design it accordingly to your preferred pathways. Okay, it's very interesting for me that peer-to-peer learning is not occurring. So we thought that peer-to-peer learning is so much of where it's the biggest value, but it's very good to see your preferences. Thank you. So yeah, thank you very much for your indications. And before I close, I just want to thank you, and I really want to encourage you. What we saw in our workforce nutrition programs together with industry partners, we have a big program in tea with Unilever and other partners. We saw really the benefit on the level of the employees and the farm workers and farmers. It is encouraging. It gives a lot of satisfaction, and also having healthy employees in your company is just a gift. And you can contribute to this gift. And thank you. And that was our presentation. And if you have questions, most welcome.
Thank you so much, Barbara and Sharon. Actually, we have received a couple of questions, and I've seen that Sharon has started to answer them, but I think it's actually quite relevant for everyone to hear about. So there was one question from Saliha about the fact that COVID-19 has highlighted the great importance of safety at home and at work. And she's asked how this can be integrated in the Workforce Nutrition Alliance program as part of the key learning from the pandemic. So maybe Sharon, you can speak up and say what you've started to type, but I think it's relevant for everyone.
So I can start, and Barbara, please do jump in. So of course, the state of work has changed in this whole new adaptive environment, whether you're an office to a home or whatever your environment is, that does have an impact on what we're trying to achieve. And we looked at the different modules. For example, Healthy Food at Work and GAIN produced a great guide on this about 3 weeks ago that we'll make sure to share with everyone. But there are a huge amount of the recommendations that also work at home. And so it is something that we can absolutely, and we do need to think about the new environment, because the state of where we work and how we work has changed, and I don't think we'll go back to the way it was before. So it's a really good point. I think some of the recommendations that we're building into the implementation plan absolutely work in the two environments, but we probably do need to look more into the safety piece. Barbara, I don't know what you could.
Thanks, Sabia, for the comment. So the healthy food at work recommendations can also be easily transferred to private houses. So that is not a big deal. So we already have a guide. I will put into the chat. And the safety piece is the missing piece in our in the approach right now. Yeah, we come back to it.
Thank you very much. And there was also another question from Ishiro, who asked what we mean by the Work Nutrition Alliance rewards. Do you plan to introduce ranking of the companies by points? And Ishiro shared with me a bit later privately that it could actually really help motivate some of the companies.
Yeah.
So are you doing some thinking around this?
So I can go first, Barbara, if you like. So we hadn't at the moment a plan to publish a ranking, but one of the feedback that we're getting from the companies that are self-assessing, of course, this motivation to continue to progress along the implementation journey and reach that gold status, the ultimate goal. Some form of benchmarking on other peers, whether it's in the industry, would be useful. But at the moment we haven't. We have a website where, of course, we would like to share case studies, best practices, examples of businesses that are going, as we said, beyond business as usual. So we would like to offer a platform to share that, but an actual ranking and listing of companies, no. But we did think that some form of internal benchmarking would be useful on the self-assessment journey.
Thank you. We also get another, actually it's a remark, but I think it's an interesting one as well. Talking about another nice ripple effect of the Workforce Nutrition Program, which is the touch point of the 3 million employees that go back to their families and community, which really helps to increase awareness and knowledge about nutrition.
Absolutely. With the component of nutrition education, you bring it back to the families.
Thank you. Well, great exchange. Is there any more comment like the one we just received, or any more questions? So we have suggestions as well from Maria about the fact that testimonials will be effective and foster other companies to follow. So we get 2 concrete suggestions, right? One about the ranking and one about testimonials. So some food for thought for us.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maria, for that. Are there other suggestions maybe? I mean, this is now time for a wider discussion. So please go back to the different presentations you've received on the Nutrition for Growth Summit, on the launch of the Nutrition Pledge, on the Workforce Pledge, on the GAIN presentation as well. And let's see if you have more comments or more questions. For me, overall, I'm really excited to see the number of participants in this webinar and also all of the speakers working for different organizations and really joining efforts to try and move this forward. I think what has happened with COVID-19 is really sad and scary, but it's also one lifetime chance, I think, to really spin things differently and really get our acts together. There's never been so much interest by people all across the world, independent of their jobs and their interests, into providing healthy food, protecting our resources so as to ensure the future of the next generations, and looking at all of these amazing efforts here that everybody has been talking about, whether it's the government of Japan or CGF, IFBA, WBCSD, all of the participants here. There is so much willingness to work together, and I think very much in the same direction. So hopefully we're going to be able to mobilize this momentum and this energy and really get to a transformational year. You know, hopefully 2020 and 2021 for sure, with the Nutrition for Growth Summit, the Food Systems Summit as well, and many other events where we can feature the activities and the efforts and the interest of the people. So we see even more links right now. Barbara has shared as well the handbook for healthier food at work and at home. I would encourage people to either continue to share in the chat box as they've been doing, really relevant links. I think these are valid for the 70 participants. And again, as said before, we're going to hold a second session of this webinar this afternoon in Europe for people who are in the Northern Hemisphere to also be able to join. And we are recording this session, and we will be sharing the slides and the record so that everybody can also remember what have been some of the discussions and go back to some of the presentations. And if you have any follow-up questions or suggestions for our different presenters today, please drop us an email. We'll be happy to make the link between the relevant people and make sure that we can continue this great work together. I think we are done with regards to this session. Is there one more slide, maybe Camilla or Emily? No, I think we're done. We're a bit ahead of time. That was planned. This is good. We heard that usually participants are really happy when they can be released a few minutes earlier and save a bit of time before the next call or the next Zoom-in webinar that they're subscribed to. So again, thank you so much, everyone. Please keep the work going and the energy so high, and hopefully all together we'll really achieve a transformation of the food system, and it's really ample time that we do so. So thanks everyone, and we'll be in touch. Bye-bye. Thank you so much, I should say, to my team as well, Emily, Camilla, Tamara, for the great preparatory work they've done, and of course all of the speakers today and their teams as well.